Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and I've got a really interesting show for you today. I don't like to be in an echo chamber. I always like to hear different perspectives, and we're going to get a very different perspective in this broadcast. I became aware of this person, and I hope not to butcher her name. It is Preity Üpala, through my buddies, the Jackman brothers, having her on their podcast. And there's a lot to say about her. I mean, she's done a ton of different things. She's been an actress, an investment banker, a speaker. She's traveled the world, and you continue to be kind of this pseudo-influencer on the bounds of the internet and the mainstream as well. And you talk about a plethora of issues. So I thought it would be awesome to get your perspective on what's been going on the last 10 plus months, maybe 12 months in the world, where we're going, and maybe talk about that from an international view, because you just got back from Dubai and you're back in the Hollywood Hills right now, correct?
Correct, yes.
So why don't you introduce yourself to my audience? And by the way, this is her YouTube channel. You guys can check her out at the Preity Experience and over on Twitter as well at the same handle. I do want to remind everybody, fully demonetized on this platform, and if we try to view my latest campaign on GoFundMe, it's no longer found because they have now banned me as well. So we're getting around it with the Go Get Funding, with the Rockfin. I don't want to, blow it up too much right now because we have a guest, but again, I probably won't be on this platform much longer because I dare talk about things that go outside of the narrative, and that's kind of where we're at in 2021, Preity.
Well, namaste, Jason, and namaste to your amazing audience. It's always nice to have conversations with all sorts of people, and especially truth seekers like yourself who really want to do the research and come to the truth of the matter. Because I think in this world of mainstream media, globally, all around the world, there's just way too many distortions that are happening, and the truth is being hid from us. And you are right. I just got back from Dubai, where I spent Christmas, New Year's, had a blast, and one of the few places in the world that's open right now. And boy, did we have a great New Year's Eve party to sort of just really bring in the new year. It was amazing experience. But I'm back in town, plotting my next trip already. But for now, I'm in Hollywood. So just a little bit about myself, very briefly. I'm from actually born in Dubai, born in the Middle East, grew up there, and my family moved to Europe and then Australia, where I went to university. I have 2 degrees. I worked as an investment banker and a management consultant all around the world before I decided that that was not my dharma and that I wanted to do something creative and artistic. And I wanted to use all of my gifts, on the global stage, so to speak, which brought me to New York and then LA to study film and acting. And I've been here for 10 years. It's been very magical because I travel a lot for my work. I, do many other things as well, other than just acting and producing. And so that's been amazing. So, I speak around the world on a variety of issues, all the way from soft power, spirituality, peace, oneness, dharma, purpose, to geopolitics and counterterrorism and all of those things. And, it's quite interesting. I'm writing my first book, very excited about that. I also write for a ton of publications, all quite globally. Some of my work has been syndicated, which is great. And again, I write on very spiritual topics, meditation, yoga, Ayurveda, peace, happiness, as well as how to get the bad guys, the conflicts and nuclear terrorism and mainly geopolitics and foreign policy. I don't focus much on U.S. politics. And yeah, I have my own podcast, the Preity Experience, and pretty active on social media. I also work with think tanks globally, and I'm a part of this WEF type of summits where I can, speak on different things. So I'm kind of in various worlds. And it's all Maya anyway. So it doesn't matter. I can be involved in all of these things and be very detached, and which is very healthy, because what I'm finding is everyone is in a bubble, and their ecosystem, if you want to call it that, and they don't want to listen to other points of views and consider other perspectives at all, especially when it comes to media, academia. And it's very, very dangerous, I think, for society. So when you are detached with the result, or even with what you're doing, but you just want to do the best job you can, and you're genuinely searching for the truth will find you, because it's out there, so you must seek, I think, sincerely. It's there, but let me tell you, it ain't always pretty. I don't think you're going to be happy with what you find out. And in my own case, I feel like I've opened a Pandora's box, and I almost wish that I had never gotten into all of this in the first place, because the more you know, the deeper you go, and suddenly you know too much, and you're like, is this really the kind of world that we're living in? I was happier when I was blissfully ignorant. But
See, that's where I got to draw the line, though, because do you want to be blissfully ignorant, or do you want to deal with the evils that have already surrounded you and you just didn't know about, and they're going to be there one way or the other? So do you want to know about them, so maybe you can come up with a solution with other people by sharing that information? I think that's what the importance of truth is. Talking about Dubai being open, starting there, because there's a ton of things I want to go through with just your bio and what you do. But for instance, the UFC card yesterday, Fight Island is in Dubai, and for the first time, they had a crowd. This is the first time the UFC, some other organizations have had a crowd, but this is a big step. First of all, tell us maybe a little bit about the culture there, and then how it changed during COVID, and now what it's like post, or is it even post-COVID there? Explain that to people.
yeah, interesting. I've seen Dubai change a lot from in the last 20, 30 years. Even then, it was rich. I mean, the United Arab Emirates, which is the country, and Abu Dhabi is the capital. Dubai is just the commercial city there. But Dubai obviously has the brand image, and everybody knows about Dubai. So I've been traveling there for so many years, and I've seen a shift. I actually must say I'm seeing a shift for the better in terms of the mentality and attitude of the Emiratis, because I think 20, 30 years ago they thought that they were that it was there was a lot of sort of underlying racism, classism there. It was very subversive, but it was there. And I didn't like what I was seeing. I never experienced it myself, luckily, but I just thought that here's a society where they are the minority, and the people who built the country are all workers from many countries. And I just didn't feel like they got the respect and the kind of the human dignity that they should. And now, sort of in the last 5 years, I think a lot of these countries, they've changed in their own status, where suddenly they are very important in the geopolitical scene in the world. So suddenly, I think the Emiratis are waking up. They're finding out who their allies are, who their friends are. You might be interested to know that although it's an Islamic country, they do have I guess Sharia law in effect, I suppose. They're very liberal, definitely to tourists, but I just feel like they are moving away from this whole funding of radicalization. Maybe many decades ago they were a kind of part of the ummah, so to speak, more so than they are now. They're almost like distancing themselves from that, which is great to see. And then they're kind of embracing other cultures. They're the for the first time, a huge temple is going to be built there, a massive temple, and Indians have been there for probably the last 40 years, and now they have a huge place of worship, which is great. So they're becoming a little bit more tolerant, so that's great. So COVID has been very interesting. I have some numbers here. The population of the United Arab Emirates, the country, is about 10 million. The population of Dubai itself is 3.5 million. And as of today, well, actually, I think in the history of COVID, there entire number of cases has been 250,000. Um, and the number of deaths all up is only 745. So they have done extremely well. I There are a number of reasons for this. I think the weather definitely helps because it's an extremely hot country, and during June to August is their hottest months. That's when COVID was peaking everywhere around the world, and I mean, it's so hot. I think just those desert conditions don't are not great for like sort of transmitting and things like viruses. So actually, I think they got very lucky in that way. But they've done very well. Now, I was shocked when I landed there. I remember I think I was going to the to my hotel, and I didn't quite have a mask as I got out of the airport, and the taxi driver said, no, 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 please have your mask on. There's a fine here. If you have no mask, they will fine you, and the fine is almost 1,000 US dollars if
Ooh.
you don't have a mask on. I was shocked, you know. But then I thought, okay, well, if you have those kind of fines, of course, everybody's masked up, and helps in curbing the thing. Not that I don't think the masks actually is the reason why they have such few cases, but whatever. People complied. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
Everybody, although they tend to put their masks under their nose, and I was so tempted to tell them, like, guys, that's kind of useless. You need to put it over your nose, and the mask isn't. It's not that you're not going to catch anything, it's that you're not going to give anything to anyone. So I think they didn't quite understand how to even wear the masks. Not everyone, some of them. I saw that under the nose thing a lot, and I was a bit like, this is interesting. I don't know what they've been taught, but they were disciplined. But it's open for business. All hotels, restaurants, they have shows, they have the cricket matches. They're going to have lots of sporting events. They might even have concerts. I know New Year's was huge, the fireworks, everyone out and about, but
Now
not in
let
the
me
street.
be clear though. They're not pushing a vaccine there at all. All these things are happening with zero talk of a vaccine to reopen society. And again, you have seen hotter climates with less cases. I would also assume that they're just talking about using traditional medicine and not going right to a ventilator. You talk about a number of what, 13 or 10 million in the entire
Yeah.
country. That's about half the state of New York. And if you look at the city, that's comparable to the size of the city. Now, obviously, New York City is a much geographically condensed area than even that area of the Emirates, but it's closer. It's you know what I mean. It's not like totally spread out. And you look at all this stuff, and that is a vast cultural difference where we're being told, and having these rolling lockdowns in different states. Luckily, I moved to Iowa. It's not like that. We went out drinking last night, nobody wearing masks. It's like 2019 all over again. We can go get a steak. But living in New York, where I was previously, forget about it. You can't. Well, what were your thoughts on that? The fact that that's not being pushed, you are seeing society open. Are there talks of international vaccine passports or any of that nonsense in that country?
That's a good point. I think Dubai, like many other places like Bali or Thailand, does rely on tourism. They actually get an incredible number of tourists every year, and it is, I think, the hospitality industry is huge there. So for them, for a few months, there wasn't a lot of travel, and the hotels, I think they did sort of either close or really reduce the capacity and all of that. Obviously, they saw the effects of that. They knew that they couldn't continue, so they knew at some point they had to open up. You have to understand that it's very easy to manage a country of 10 million as opposed to 350 million. People always want to throw these examples of Scandinavia and so on. I mean, that's a country of 5 million, very homogenous. They're all rich white people, who don't have a history of, problems, societal issues. So you've got to cut, other nations some slack. But I think with Dubai, it's always been a police state. People don't realize this. Foreigners go there and they think, oh my God, it's so liberal. It sounds like it's liberal. It feels like it, but there's cops everywhere. You are being sort of, you can't step out of line. You have to be you have to follow the rules, and it's their rules. Some of the rules are very reasonable, some are not reasonable, but if you do live there, you have to respect their tradition. So I haven't heard of international vaccines being pushed on them. I'm sure they will be made available. But I think that the number of fatalities are so low, and even active cases are pretty low. So they're not going to mandate it to the 10 million. It doesn't serve a purpose. I don't know from my research if they are developing their own vaccine. I suspect not. I don't think they need to, because they've got they're on very friendly relations with many other countries that are developing high-end vaccines, like India, and now recently with the Israel UAE connection. I mean, Israel is
They've done
so
the
innovative
most
in this area. They're
vaccinations per
doing very
capita.
well.
Yeah, Israel's done the most. For those that don't know, they have done the most vaccinations per capita since this thing has started. And I was looking at the numbers; it was pretty incredible for that nation, as many as they have rolled out and had people take. So, all right, being over there, it's a little more open. You come back, you're now in LA. You know, personally,
Yes.
not my favorite place. Just gonna say it, not my favorite place, but it's also in a state that has the most lockdowns, along with New York. What are your views on that? Like, what's going on? Because I feel like I talk to my friends that have like social lives and are up in like maybe a little bit more upper echelon, and they're just doing their thing. You know, there's house parties, or there's always a place to meet, and they're getting around it. But then I talk to, like, you know, the lower class working folks like myself with families and stuff, and they're like, this is awful. We can't do anything. You know, they didn't have the disposable income in the first place. They may be hurting more. What's your take being where you are?
It's very, very sad to see, I think, LA in this state. Yesterday, I went to Huntington Library, which is kind of near Pasadena, and had a great sort of tour drive, I guess, all throughout LA City. And I was going through areas that I don't usually go through, and I was shocked to see the homelessness there. Just in the last 2 months, all of the tents have come up, and all through the highway, underpasses, everything. And it's very, very sad to see people not being able to pay the very extreme, expensive rents, which have not come down. There's no rent relief. That should have been the first thing. And I think for a state that wants to enforce such, kind of draconian lockdowns, you should have a counter to that, and make people's lives easier by also offering whatever is the rent relief, even with the unemployment thing. I think EDD is like $8 billion has been, part of the scam, the EDD scam. This is the most fraud infested, probably, state in the world. I can't believe how many scammers and con artists there are in LA. I mean, people are in prison and they're collecting unemployment checks based on somebody else's name. And how is the EDD not seeing this? How is the bank not seeing this? I don't want to say too much, but it seems like an inside job, if you know what I mean.
Well,
There's
I
just
think that
way
it's a
too
large
much.
distraction, because at the end of the day, what you have now is a huge transfer of wealth. You see all these billionaires making more money, and as assets are gobbled up, it doesn't matter how much inflation or the dollar crashes, they have the assets. Meanwhile, you can always point to the low-level corruption of the tens of thousands of people that took advantage of these programs that obviously weren't eligible. And each one of these is another 20 to 45-minute segment on some bullshit MSNBC late night program that they focus on. And those thousands of people did this. Meanwhile, a handful of billionaires literally got tens of billions apiece while they send us the shaft. That's why it's allowed to happen. First of all, corruption is inherent in human beings. I think that you would agree, especially when we talk about spirituality. But the levels of corruption, especially in a time like this, right, when there are so many restrictions, when there are so many draconian rules, when in your state Gavin Newsom can go have a dinner with a bunch of his buddies, without masks on, and then just say, I made a bad decision. Or Nancy Pelosi can do the same. we are kind of living in this upside down world where the narrative that we're presented is almost assuredly not the real narrative, or not the one that benefits the masses. So, being in the media, you're a writer, you've been in all these publications. How do you feel about the media and what's going on in the world right now, especially with the Capitol incident, the election itself? You go as far as you want, but, having some inside knowledge, what is your feelings?
I think this has it's been leading up to it. There is such a thing as fake news or false reporting. As somebody who has reported extensively on the Kashmir conflict, for example, in India, and reading all what the Western mainstream media says about it, and I know from my own sources, and actually being Indian, and being in India, especially when some of these riots were happening, I was in the middle of the riots. I know the truth of the matter and how they twist it around. I know that they would do that for any country, for any leader. So I'm not naive to believe what the mainstream media feeds us. In fact, the way that they twist is awful, because they overcompensate, they overdo your kind of useless points, and then the real problem, they kind of overprotect it and shield it so that you'll never even suspect what's actually going on. I think it's despicable, it's insidious, it's very scary. So this has been happening for years, and I think recently they have said that there is no shame. They're shameless, and they're kind of breaking all the rules of journalism, of being neutral and fair. It's all agenda-based reporting. It's all opinion pieces, and it's all, this is my political view, and I'm going to push this, and your view does not matter. And now they're shutting down. There's a lot of shutting down of other points of view, and it doesn't have to be the opposite political spectrum. I think the people who are affected the most are actually people in the middle. The independents, the investigative journalists, the neutral people, the people who are objective. They're getting shut down as much as these guys, media or political opposites. So it's very scary. The year has just begun. We're starting a new 4-year cycle. I am so scared to just even imagine how bad it's going to get. And I think, sadly, at least half of this country they have their head buried under the sand. They have no clue. They're celebrating, and they have no clue what's about to happen to this country. Some of this is happening globally, but nothing like this. And I fear that other countries will copy it. Hopefully they won't be that dumb to copy what's going on in the US, because some things you want to copy. The US is a leader, in so many ways. It is the superpower of the world. But in 4 years' time, I don't think I can say that statement, because I think it would have been weakened incredibly, because I think all the wrong elements are going to be emboldened.
Well,
So
uniparty.
it's a scary time.
Right? Uniparty. Who cares? Listen, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but the bottom line is, once you put in a uniparty agenda, that is extremely dangerous. We already live in somewhat of a national security state, a fascist state, so checks and balances have kind of been out the window. The judicial, the executive, and the legislative, if anything's told us that. Again, love them or hate them, they impeached the guy for a perfectly fine phone call about the Ukraine after the guy who's about to be president said, well, son of a bitch, I was going to get on a plane in 6 hours and I wanted the prosecutor fired and I got him fired over I remember doing that story in 2018 when the CFR video was out and he's sitting up there laughing with Richard Haas. And never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that would have caused the impeachment of Trump after Russiagate failed. Like, the way that went, and then you find out, they had Hunter Biden's laptop and all these other hard drives the entire time. They were actually impeaching him for what they knew he was correct about suspecting. And now we're on this level, and I've got problems with Trump, but Joe Biden's somebody. I put him in my 2008 film. It was footage from 2007, way before he was even the vice president, for his corruption on 9/11. Like, the guy is not a good guy. He's an establishment guy, and that's when he could think for himself. You literally have an old man talking about record players in debates forget going 006 when trying to talk about a website, and they put him in power with, in my opinion, a sociopath from your state who slept her way to the top through Willie Brown and God knows who else, and couldn't get more than 1% approval during the Democrat primaries. That's not a problem with people? I mean, that blows my mind that you could have such a hatred for another person and not know anything about politics and run with that couple, you know?
I think the level of intolerance was already high, but in the last 6 months, I've seen a level of hate venom that I've never seen anywhere, and it's so shameful. Also, I think this country had an opportunity to vote for an incredible female, leader, a veteran, and they blew that. And if that had been the case, I would welcome it. I would say yes. This is in the end, it's going to work out. Even if she was just VP, I think it would be beautiful. I think actually America would be in very, very good hands. But it's not the case, and it's shameful that people are so un educated. Well, the one thing I have learned by observing Americans and US politics for the last maybe 4 or 5 years is, number one, they are very insular. They don't know or care what's going on around the world. And number two, they don't know their own laws. They haven't read the Constitution. They don't know their own electoral process. They don't know about processes and things like that. And you have to know that as a citizen. You need to know what your rights are, because there's just too much distortion, and they are so gullible. Like, you tell them anything, they'll just believe it. They don't do their own research. And I think we are seeing a level of complete, having blinders on, and very hypocritical, because you're not condemning all kinds of terrorism equally, and things like that. And it's very scary for this country. It's very scary for national security. I think for me, that's what I worry about, that more than the individual rights. I'm thinking about the country as a whole, and national security is going to go for a toss, I think, after this. And I hate to say this, but I'm just waiting, for the next big attack, because it is coming. There was a reason why it happened then, and there's going to be a reason why it's going to happen now.
Well,
and there's a reason why it didn't happen in the last 4 years.
Well, I think that the big hype right now is around some kind of a cyber attack. You've seen the smaller cyber attacks, and continually they, blame Russia without any evidence. And I'm not saying it wasn't Russia or it was Russia. I'm just saying that I don't believe known liars all the time. And when I hear guys from the Davos crowd and, the royal crowd talking about cybersecurity and the next big thing and grids going down, I think there's that possibility. In this country, however, I think that they're, number one, especially since the Capitol, have now tried to lengthen the language of what domestic terrorism is. So you have that, which is appalling in my opinion, but you have this hype surrounding a possible civil war, and it's making its way into the mainstream. You've seen how they've militarized D.C. just in the past week. It's pretty unbelievable. Even the photo op of the soldiers sleeping in the Capitol. I mean, that's ridiculous. Again, you're literally in D.C., next to Virginia, next to Maryland. There's plenty of military bases. If it was a real military operation, you just have them shift in and out. They have more than enough people, but they wanted that photo op, for that domestic terror push. And I think in some sense, there's a possibility that you do push people to violence, unfortunately. And then what does happen? You have a 100-day mask mandate. You hire a guy like Andrew Cuomo as AG who wants mandatory vaccinations. What line do you cross before regular people cross those lines? And I mean, is that in fact even quote unquote domestic terrorism? I don't know, but I didn't think we were going to be here so quickly, in a 10, 11 month.
I thought they would have eased into this, and at the end of year one, we would be having this conversation. And as someone who works with counterterrorism and works with some of the top think tanks on this issue, I can tell you that there is no think tank in the world. They all deal with counterterrorism, but the only kind of terrorism on the table there, of course, is the religious kind, the fundamental, the 9/11, and those groups, and they discuss them and why they are still able to do what they're able to do, and blah blah blah. Nobody talks about Proud Boys. I mean, that's not an issue to be dissected, because you can't, as bad as it is, it's just not on the same level. And I think by doing what they're doing now, they're shifting it's a distraction. Now suddenly they're kind of normalizing terrorism, where the actual terrorists are celebrating. They get a free pass, while all America's time and resources is going into this thing, which is a non. It's in the big scheme of things. It's just not what. It's not this global threat. While there are other global threats that are doing their thing as we speak, and getting ready to do more, and this stuff is so dangerous. And I think it's shameful and sad that Americans don't know what's going on. They're being conned so easily with this stuff. Like, it doesn't matter who you vote for, or who you like, or who you don't like, but you need to at least keep your country's interests at the top. You need to know about these issues. You need to realize that there are enemies of the state out there, and you have your friends, you have your adversaries. You need to know who they are, because quite frankly, now there's going to be a swapping of that. So now you're going to actually be sleeping with the enemy again, like they've been doing for. So none of this is good.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that with a Biden administration, there's a good possibility that we'll be in another military conflict finally with Iran? I mean, I'd hate to see it. It's something they've talked about since the quote-unquote axes of evil and all these things post 9/11. But here we are, literally, we're going to hit the 20th anniversary of 9/11 this year. And that is one of the things that hasn't happened. To Trump's credit, I don't love his alliance with Saudi Arabia. I don't love what's happening in Yemen. But as far as another ground war, he didn't start one. Do you think there's that possibility with the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden administration?
Well, I think their weakest link is foreign policy and geopolitics, and the people that they have hired are, if you look at their history, it's atrocious. And these people have their own personal agendas, So the thing is that I think America gets this whole thing wrong. They always think that this Iran issue is such a, they're so scared of Iran, but I don't think that country or that issue is the big problem. It's actually the Afghan conflict that has also been going on for almost 20 years, and that's where all the money and the resources go, and the troops are still there. And the problem is, you're talking about alliances. They have I don't know, in their genius, they thought that a terror harboring country like Pakistan was going to be the answer to the fight against terrorism, whereas what these guys do is they actually are the ones that give refuge to the terrorists and train them and support the Afghan Taliban, and they have their own Taliban anyway, right? So, but none of this make I don't think I don't think this administration got the memo with that. So it's very, very dangerous. And I think with the Afghan thing, if you pull out overnight, you're going to leave a vacuum, which is going to make things worse. So, you have to find the right strategy. And I think the strategy that they have, even the peace process that they signed, I would tear it up. It is awful. Write up a new one, get creative, whatever. But the way that they're going is very, very dangerous. And it's so shameful, because, they should be getting briefed by experts on this. Either they're not listening to their experts, or they're not getting briefed at all, or they're getting briefed by the wrong people. So I suspect they're just surrounding themselves with the wrong kind of advisors, As we saw with Bernie, he had some shady advisors who didn't give him any good advice, especially on this foreign policy issues, which was just very, very scary scenarios. So, with Iran, I think they're going to want to they're going to say we come in peace, but then that only lets the rogue elements do what they want to do, so it doesn't help. I think you need to show your might in the right way, and that hasn't been done yet. But I think they also need to focus on where the actual problems are, because I get a feeling that they're looking at the wrong place for the problems. I think they need to look elsewhere to find out the source, and then deal with it in the right way. But I have no, I have no confidence that this country is gonna, in the next at least 2 years, going to be getting a handle on global terrorism at all. That's just not. I don't think that they're sort of aligned that way. And in fact, we're going to see like kind of a weakening in that area. So and also the Indo-Pacific, of course, is so much has been said about the Quad, which is these great four democracies coming together to stand up to the CCP and all of that. Sadly, I don't want to see a reversal. I don't want to see the Quad become a trio. That's my worst nightmare. And so much work that has been done would just be for waste. I hope that foreign policy does not change overnight. Um, you know, uh, I mean, and sadly, we don't have checks and balances. You have, now something can pass in both the House and the Senate without enough people questioning it, right? It's very scary. So I just hope that their hands are full with economic situations and Corona, that foreign policy is at the bottom of their list, because that's where the real problem is. And that's where America becomes vulnerable, I think, on a global stage.
So, what do you think's going to happen now in this country for the next? I mean, what's your 6 month prediction? It's about COVID and spirituality and what's going on. What do you think? I mean, let's talk about the United States first, but then globally, what are we going to see? Because obviously, this is a global issue. Different countries are handling it different ways, but when you especially look at the European models, the Australian models, the Canadian models, the United States models, they're very, very lockstep. And there also seem to be very, very lockstep with this kind of media totalitarianism. Like, I find it extremely ironic that it's the Mexican president that's going to come save our president from the big tech. I mean, what the fuck is going on in the world? Like, are you kidding me right now? I mean, it's like we talk about Mexico and it's like, you watch Cartel Land and there's just so much outward corruption with the police and the drugs and whatever. We hide it better up here. Maybe not so much in Iran, Contra, and all that other stuff that came out. But my point being is now it's the Mexican president that's saying big tech's gone too far. So what do you think's going to happen? I mean, obviously a grim look on foreign policy and terror, but this country, COVID, and then kind of the world's response.
I think when we are getting lectures from, by the way, kudos to the Mexican president. I think I've seen some good things come out of his mouth. So good for him. But when we get lectures from the CCP talking about democracy, we know that the whole thing is it's a sad case, sad day for the people, so to speak, because that they are the last people that we need to be getting advice from, considering they don't have any freedom or human dignity or human rights at all. So I think I thought that the next 6 months would just be trying to take care and recuperate the very very hit economy of the U.S. and manage Corona. That would be a good thing, at least as far as I'm concerned. However, I am getting a lot of reports. It's very, very scary that they've got a lot of executive orders lined up. Look, stimulus is one thing. I welcome that wholeheartedly, but it's the other things that are stuffed in with the stimulus, and it's dangerous. So I think suddenly it's go. I think we're going to double down on the intersectionality and the identity politics and the wokeness. People are going to become more intolerant. We can't voice our point of view at all. I think this is a very divided country. Half the country is thrilled, and half the country is they're agonized. And I think in the past they used to find a middle ground. There is no middle ground right now, and I think neither, especially one, does not want to sort of be inclusive. So I don't know how you're going to heal the divide. I mean, I don't see who's coming in next. They don't have the ability to heal. In fact, they are extremely partisan and extremely polarizing in many ways. So they're going to make things worse, I feel. So I don't think this year is going to be good for America. I think they're sadly going to be weakened. in the global sphere. The good thing is that there is a change in the balance of powers. I want to say, I used to say the new world order, but that sounded too too much of a conspiracy theorist. So I'll say the new balance of power, which is the case. And we're just seeing, for example, a country like India that's finally getting its due on the global stage. I mean, this is a civilization it's the oldest continuing one. It's been around forever. And, how it has handled COVID is incredible. I mean, Prime Minister Modi was the most respected global figure that they did this survey by a reputable, American research company, and these numbers are legit. I mean, he was like 66 plus approval, and people are very, very proud of how he has handled a country of 1.4 billion with having border attacks and people encroaching on our land, and having two nuclear powers on either side who want to wipe us out. That to just bring people together. It's incredible. So I mean, you look at him. So I think it's a time when a country like India really finds its place in the geopolitical sphere, which I think it's been trying to find for a long time, and now it seems like there is the seas have parted for it. So I'm happy about that. I'm very proud of Australia, how they've conducted themselves. I think Japan, Taiwan has done very well. I mean, there's so many, South Korea, Vietnam. So it's good. And, so I think UK, the Brexit, obviously in the long run, is going to be better for the UK. But in the interim, it's going to be very, very painful for them. But
Yeah,
I
does that
see
even
a
get
shift.
done? Do you really think Brexit eventually gets done? I feel like I've been hearing about it and it just keeps getting passed off and it gets
I think it's
lighter.
done. It's technically done. They will get, but the sad thing is that it got done and immediately they found that new strain. So it's
Mhm.
ironic because now I think they're actually, now they're getting what they wanted. They really wanted to shut down that transfer of people, and because they didn't need Brexit. I think what Brexit wanted to do, the Corona did it. They didn't
Mhm.
have to go through all of this thing because I mean, nobody wants to go there and nobody's accepting flights from there. So they are really isolated and they only have themselves to depend on. Their leader, who, I mean, I quite like Bojo, but he's become a laughing stock, sadly. So
I was never on the Boris Johnson train, but I mean,
their leadership is questionable, but they have good other ministers, and I think someone is going to take him. They're going to come after him. They're going to take over the baton, and I think the UK is going to be in good hands. The next person, most likely, is actually their finance minister, who is Indian. So talk about coming full circle,
Mhm.
if in a karmic sense, and I think he's very sound. So I think the UK will do well if he's going to end up becoming the new PM. We'll see though.
So I got another question for you. Again, you're well traveled. There seems to be more and more of a push to get people into digital currencies. You look at everybody using PayPal and all these other things, but now PayPal, especially, using crypto in their wallet, allowing you to buy crypto. Crypto is exploding right now. We obviously saw an all-time high with Bitcoin and almost an all-time high in Ether recently. When you travel, are you seeing more and more people go to digital currencies, use cryptos? What's your opinion on that? And is that something we're going to be seeing moving forward and going away from the dollar? I mean, you already said this next coming year probably isn't going to be the best for the United States if the dollar is weakened even further, which you'd have to imagine it's going to be after all this and all the printing of money. And
Yeah, that's a
yeah. What's your view? I mean,
great,
you're
great
again, you're
point.
traveled.
It's
I'm not.
funny.
I'm just a dumb clod. I'm here in Iowa. We don't know. I use crypto when I
It's
can.
funny. Two years ago, I wrote an article predicting that Bitcoin was going to be valued at 100,000 in its lifetime, and I actually never had it published. For some reason, I don't know what happened. It was sitting in my folder somewhere, and when I was in Dubai, um, when I found out that the it had gone to 40,000, I actually sent it to some publishers, and they published it immediately. So on New Year's Eve, I don't know, on the 1st of January, my article was published in a few places, including the Observer, and it my prediction was that it's going to go to 100,000. But the point is that it is the way of the future. Blockchain technology is the way of the future, whether you like it or not. And Bitcoin, obviously, being the oldest, and in some way people have more faith in it, I think it's going to do very well. I mean, 40,000. I'm a miner myself. I got involved years ago,
Oh,
so I'm
oh.
thrilled and I'm excited about more gains to come this year. In Dubai, people use it a lot. I mean, I had a friend who had invited me to a New Year's Eve gala, and he didn't have cash on him. He only had his Bitcoin, and he was paying with for everything with that. So I suppose that's going to we're going to be seeing more of that. Um, so I mean, digital is one thing. PayPal, Venmo is one thing. I mean, crypto is something very different though, because of the nature of it. As good as it is that it's decentralized, the problem also is that it can be used for all kinds of unsavory things too. And but I suspect that governments around the world and banks are realizing that they can't beat it, so join it. So I think every country is going to have its own currency. All the banks are having, even the royal the Royal Bank of England is going to have it now. So, and that's really gonna, I think that's the way of the future, because they can't beat this. It's gone, it's too far gone. um and so we'll see what happens, but I think the world is in flux, churn. We are changing in many ways. We're becoming smaller. It's But yet I find it more disconnected than ever before. I don't think we trust each other. So we can have conversations with people on the other side of the world, but I think that human warmth, that openness, the trust is dwindling. I really feel it. I think technology is making us more disconnected than ever before, even though it's making everything more accessible and convenient. So I think the human element is really going to go for a toss, especially when AI comes in. And when it comes in, AI is a tool. You don't let it rule you, and it's not the king. It's not supposed to kind of be the foundation of our life and existence. And some people want that. That's very, very dangerous.
Well, I'm glad you know what, that's a great transition into kind of where we're going with this whole thing because, pre-COVID, there were a lot of those articles and talks about how people were so disconnected because of technology. And, you talk about AI. Look, every time you take that selfie and it's no good, it's not only seeing that it's no good and that you didn't like it, it's looking at your facial expression. Then it's running the algorithm how many times you tap that button. Then it's running the algorithm, oh, I like this one, and you sent out. And then it's running the algorithm of how many times you checked it to see how many thumbs up or likes. They're building these things. AI is a reality now. And in my opinion, with COVID-1984 and masking up and getting rid of the restaurants and I can't go talk to a girl at the bar and all this Johnny nonsense, it is a transhumanist movement. It's trying to disconnect us even further from being able to have a conversation with somebody that you might disagree with, God forbid, and then not being hostile towards that person, but maybe absorbing what they said, coming with a counter argument, or thinking about it and then maybe having a discussion a couple days or a week later. I know it's novel. It's very novel these days. People cut people right out of their lives because of some fucking meme they posted at this point. So what is your thought? I mean, you talk about people being more disconnected. Is that by design to make us more dependent on AI and these systems of what I would call control, this track, trace, database society?
I think some people, it's a plan for some companies and some people who stand to benefit a lot. A company that has AI based products. Let's say they're going to make a killing if this is the direction that the world is going to go through, and it's already starting to happen. It's very, very scary. I don't think that we were set up for that. But hey, 2020, I mean, nobody expected Corona. Nobody thought that some sort of nondescript virus that came out of some lab somewhere, made the whole world shut down and 8 billion people hunker down, nobody would think that that would have happened, because they would have said, well, where's the fight back? I mean, are you telling me that 200 countries all agreed to this? It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's not mathematically possible that every single kind of government did this, right? It's so odd. I have spoken to many transhumanist scientists and professors on this issue, and I was probing, and I said, look, a computer AI machine can never replace a human being, right? They actually think that they can. And I said, hang on. So, what about emotions? And they said that we are developing the technology where this machine is going to now have human emotions. They're going to emulate, they're going to be sad, they're going to be angry. I can actually believe that. I think technologically that you obviously can have robots that are happy and not happy. But then I said, yeah, but what about what you can't replicate is atma, soul, and consciousness.
But they don't believe the
And,
soul. And consciousness
and
is just like a thing. It's not a big
yeah,
deal. They don't
one
need...
thing is some scientists don't believe in that, but second, some maybe believe in that. But this guy, he said, no, we are going to even produce that. I said, you can't do that. And then I had to throw it. I'm like, look, dude, I'm going to destroy your conversation. What you cannot emulate is the karma of that person. And this is where my Hindu thought comes into mind, because that's what makes us different from a rock or a baboon, or a fish, or a tree, or a machine. They don't have, well, Atma is one, but beyond the Atma is your karma, that your spirit. Why is your spirit here? Your path, your dharma. All of that sort of energy stuff from a divine point of view, that you can't have in a thing or an animal, or whatnot, and that you can never replicate. And even things like awareness and all of that, you just can't. I mean,
Well, the
and I think that,
Kurzweilians, they believe different. All those disciples of Ray Kurzweil and Google and AI and Musk, they basically believe that you'll be able to take a person, upload their consciousness via the singularity, and you'll be anything you want. And to me, this whole transgender movement is way beyond just somebody's sexual preference or how they want to look or appear. We see that with the non-binaries, and I see it more and more being promoted in popular culture, even children's movies. When I watch Zootopia, and in the very beginning, when they have the little con job and the kid's going to be an elephant and it's really a mouse, and now it's like trans species, they're selling you on this idea that none of this matters, and ultimately we're going to be able to upload your consciousness into whatever you want to be, and that's what you can identify as. And like Kurzweil said, we're going to travel the stars and all that. And I think it's bullshit. I think it's ultimately one of those entrapments, one of those things that you reach for that's never there, when you should be happy with the humanity that we have, the consciousness that we do have. Whether you want to call that a soul... Go ahead.
It seems to me like there are some scientists out there who are on acid and cooking up these grand delusions of what life could be like. Oh, we're going to travel to Mars and this and that and the other. We're going to teleport each other and stuff. And they truly believe that AI is the way. This is very dangerous. They're going to take down a lot of people with them. They're going to, really destroy humanity. But where is the regulation? I think this is where a little bit where I actually respect religion. And maybe even spirituality, because from a religious perspective, you can't do that. You can't mess with DNA, because all of this comes under that sort of spectrum of don't change God's creation, and uploading consciousness. Like, are you kidding me? Give me a break. I mean, you can't even upload my consciousness. It's too grand anyway. But these things, I think maybe religion needs to step in, and because religion is very polarizing, they have a lot of power as well. They should use that power for the betterment of humanity and stop some of this stuff from going too far. A little bit of technology is good, a little bit of science is good, but you don't want a situation where you can just anything you can do, and that there's no pushback from people, because the masses don't know the complications. They don't know when the scientists are kind of experimenting. We don't know what experiments are happening around the world, and we don't know the side effects, right? So we're not educated, we don't have the knowledge, and very few people seek that knowledge. I think we need to maybe start seeking and questioning these people as well, hold them accountable, not just the government, but what about academia? What are they teaching us? It's a lot of hogwash, and look at the kind of students that are coming out. You look at all these violent protests, there's a lot of kids, a lot of misguided kids who are really believing in these horrible philosophies that never worked. All this communist Marxist stuff, very, very scary stuff. But I think suddenly this country is such a great country because of its openness. The flip side of that is people are just too good. They're too nice. They're very naive. They kind of fall prey to all of this propaganda and stuff. And you don't want able people, American citizens, to be sort of having the wrong ideas about life, because then as a country they can do stuff in the world, and affecting because whether you like it or not, they are the leaders, and the rest of the world does follow America. So if they're going down the wrong track, there are many others that are going to follow that way. And so that's what I fear. But this is also, there's like I said, it's all Maya. So the flip side is there are people waking up. People are really finding out what's going on. I'm finding a split. There's 50% of people are really extremely knowledgeable about all of this stuff. They're getting really wise. They're becoming innovative, and just ready to do what needs to be done and take care of themselves and their own mind, body, spirit as well, protect themselves. And then the other side is the sheep. So you have people waking up, you have people finding out their purpose in life. You have some dharmic countries that are able to get their place in the sun now, and some of the rogues are being kind of the curtain is lifted for the world to see, right? So, and also I think from a spiritual perspective, all of this, for me, COVID 2020 was a very spiritual year, because I was able to contemplate a lot and really be honest with myself and spend time in meditation, isolation, write and think and speak about important things. And I think many people did that. So it's good as well. And we're realizing that this is all the material stuff it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. The only thing what matters is your spiritual connection to source, your sense of peace. Are you happy? And what are you to the world? What is your gift to the world? So that's all good. And that didn't happen in 2018. Now it's all happening. So I think you have the light and the dark both being elevated, and you just should pick the light, I think.
Well, especially with technology, I always say it's one of a double-edged sword. It can be used to empower humanity. It can be used to enslave humanity. Hammer can be used to bust somebody's head, build a house. This technology platform, I'm streaming in 1080p to several different platforms from my office. At the same time, it's cutting people off left and right, and it's presenting a narrative. So I think that we are in a great battle, and we've got to continue to do so. We've been talking for almost an hour. Her name is Preity Üpala. Preity, what would you like to leave us with? Where can people follow your stuff? What's your latest stuff that's out there? And just let my audience know.
All right. Oh, thank you so much for having me on your show. I thank your audience for listening in to this very riveting conversation. So I'm all everywhere, very active on Twitter. I am the Preity Effect. So please follow me. I'm very active. YouTube, I have my own show called The Preity Experience, which I'm sure you love all the content. I've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews around the world on all of these very interesting topics. My work is published all around. I just Google my name and article, journalist, or maybe a specific topic, and it'll come up. Also on YouTube, you can type my name as well, and you'll see a lot of videos come up. Facebook is just Preity Üpala. Instagram, it's also the Preity Effect. And I'm writing my first book. I'm very excited. That should be published towards the towards the end of the year. And I appear on TV shows as well, including CNN and a lot of international portals too. So watch out for me, but please reach out to me. I'm very open and engaging. I love to hear from people, especially if you have, similar perspectives to myself, or if you're also a world traveler and you want to talk just travel, whether it's airlines or airports. I've been to 100 countries. I've done it all 5-star, first class as well. So, I lived a good life too. That's the beauty of the Maya of the whole thing, because you can enjoy the luxury, but you're not off it. So it doesn't define you. So, you get to have the best of both worlds. So please reach out. I love to hear from you. And thank you again for having me on your wonderful show. Finally, we get to have the
Finally.
conversation.
I know we were supposed to do this that first time I went to DC and I got all cluttered up. Thank you so much. We got to do it again sooner rather than later. I'm glad you came. All right,
Thank
everybody.
You, my dear. Namaste. Thank you.
You got it. That is Preity Üpala. And she, again, we don't agree on everything, but she's great. I'm glad we actually did that conversation. I'll tell you what. Again, you get a perspective outside of Jason Burmis. I don't know if I'm ever going to Dubai. I'd like to go to Dubai. I don't know if it's going to happen. But there's somebody who's been there, done that in many respects that I may never do. So, again, always good to get that perspective. Campaign not found. You're not only fully demonetized on YouTube, but they took away your GoFundMe. You bet they did. Campaign not found. We're going to do a full video on that. I was going to do it tonight, but my buddy Joe ended up staying another night, so maybe this is going to be it. I want to let everybody know that we got the Get Go funding or Go Get funding. This is going. This is how you can support me. The link's down below. Hopefully they're not going to ban me for no good reason. All the documentary films are free in the playlist section. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. Thumbs it up, sub, and share while you can. We want to stay here. We want 75,000 subscribers, 100,000 subscribers, and, just to continue on. Rockfin.com. I'll be going live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, exclusive and free. Let me see how many close we are. We almost have 10,000 followers. How many more? We only need 47 of you. 47 of you watching that aren't members of Rockfin. Go make the free account. Make sure you're there. And we're backing it up on the blockchain technology. We're over at Odyssey as well. I love you guys. Thanks for joining me. It's not about left and right. It's about right and wrong. And we can have differences of opinions as long as we keep an open dialogue. Love you, and see you on the flip side.